Welcome to Headstones and Microphones, Founder Stories, where we use AI to step into the past through a researched, first-person simulation of history's most visionary founders. I am your host, Calvin. While we've added some creative storytelling, our goal is to inspire your own study of these trailblazers. Now, let's meet our guest. Colonel Harland Sanders, welcome to the show. It is an absolute honor to have you here today.
Well, thank you so much, Calvin.
Let's dive right in. When you first conceived of your business, the world was a very different place. What was the exact moment you realized society was moving in a direction only you could see? And how did you convince the early skeptics?
Back in the 1930s, I was running a service station in Corbin, Kentucky, and I started feeding hungry travelers right at my own dining table. I noticed folks were in a hurry, but they still wanted a good, wholesome meal. I realized that the American family was starting to move faster, and roadside dining was going to be a massive part of our culture. The skeptics thought I was just a gas station fellow trying to fry up ordinary food, but I convinced them by letting the product do the talking. When they tasted that perfect combination of pressure-cooked moisture and my special blend of 11 herbs and spices, they realized this wasn't just ordinary backyard cooking.
Leaving behind safety to build something entirely unproven is a massive gamble. What did your life look like the day you decided to go all in? And what was the core belief that gave you the courage to take that first step?
When I decided to take this concept on the road to franchise it, my life was anything but secure. I was 66 years old, surviving on a monthly Social Security check of just $105, and my restaurant in Corbin had been bypassed by a new highway, which forced me to sell it off at a loss. I loaded up the back of my old car with a couple of pressure cookers, a bag of my secret seasoning blend, and flour, and I hit the road. The core belief that kept me going was simple. I knew my chicken was the best the American table could offer, and I believed that hard work and a quality product would eventually win out if I didn't give up.
In the absolute beginning, when you had no data, no capital, and no blueprint, what was the one truth you held on to that everyone else around you dismissed?
The one truth I held on to was that people would recognize and pay for true quality and consistency, even in a fast-paced setting. Everyone else thought fast food had to be cheap, greasy, and thrown together carelessly. They thought pan frying took too long and deep frying made the meat dry and crusty. I refused to accept that. I stuck to my guns that my pressure fryer method, which sealed in the juices while keeping things fast, was a revolutionary way to serve an authentic meal.
Long before your company became a household name, you hit a wall where everything nearly collapsed. Take us back to that first major failure. What went wrong, and how did you find the willpower to restart?
Oh, I hit plenty of walls before the chicken business ever took off. Back in my younger days, I tried my hand at practicing law, and that ended right after a courtroom scuffle with my very own client. Then I started a ferry boat business on the Ohio River, which was doing quite well until a big steel bridge was built right next to it and made my boats completely useless. Every time I failed, it hurt, but I always went back to my mother's lesson to do all you can and do the best you can. I just looked for the next open door, which eventually led me to that gas station in Corbin.
Innovation often looks like madness to contemporaries. Was there a specific product, philosophy, or strategy you were utterly convinced would work, but the public initially rejected or ridiculed? How did you respond?
When I first started pitching the franchise idea to restaurant owners traveling from town to town, the whole concept of a franchise was completely foreign to most independent operators. I would tell them I wanted a nickel for every chicken they sold using my recipe and method. Many of them openly laughed at me or turned me down flat. In fact, I faced hundreds of rejections right at the start. I didn't let it sour me, though. I would just pack up my cookers, drive to the next town, sleep in the back of my car, and cook a batch for the next owner until someone finally saw the vision.
Behind the legendary name was a human being facing immense pressure, whether from financial panics, internal betrayal, or personal doubt. How did you shoulder that burden without letting the vision splinter?
The pressure was immense, especially as the operation grew too big for me to manage by myself from my home in Shelbyville. In the early days of franchising, I was doing the bookkeeping, mixing the spices, shipping out the cartons, and traveling constantly. It took a massive toll on my physical stamina and my personal life. I shouldered that burden by focusing strictly on the standard of the food. If I could ensure that every single kitchen serving my chicken kept the quality top-notch, I knew the rest of the business would hold together, no matter how heavy the administrative weight became.
Who were the very first people, beyond your immediate family, to buy into what you were doing? How did you convince early workers or customers to trust an entirely unproven concept?
The very first person to really buy into the franchise idea was Pete Harmon out in South Salt Lake, Utah back in 1952. I didn't convince him with a fancy business presentation or a pile of charts. I simply walked into his restaurant, cooked a batch of my chicken for him and his staff, and let them taste it. Pete saw right away how much his customers loved it. His restaurant sales more than tripled, and it was actually his sign painter, a fellow named Rodney Anderson, who came up with the name Kentucky Fried Chicken to make it sound like an exotic Southern specialty out there in Utah.
Can you take us to the exact moment where you felt the momentum shift? What was the specific milestone, contract, or breakthrough where you realized we aren't just going to survive, we are going to change everything?
The real turning point was during the mid-1950s when Pete Harmon's success started catching the attention of other restaurant owners. Suddenly, I wasn't just begging people to try my recipe. Independent owners were reaching out to me because they heard about the massive sales increase in Utah. When we cleared over 100 franchises and I saw the red and white striped takeout buckets becoming a staple at family picnics, I knew we had tapped into something much bigger than a roadside diner concept. We were changing how the entire world thought about a quick family dinner.
You didn't just build a company, you built a distinct culture and philosophy that outlasted you. In the early days, when it was just a handful of people in a room, how did you instill that standard of excellence or service?
I instilled it by being incredibly strict about the preparation. I would walk into a franchise kitchen, and if the gravy wasn't smooth or the chicken wasn't fried exactly to specification, I would tell them about it in no uncertain terms. I believed that hospitality meant giving the customer the absolute best, whether they were a truck driver or a millionaire sitting at the exact same table. I taught my early partners that shortcuts were the enemy of honest business and that a handshake deal required total commitment to quality.
History books often flatten a person's life into a neat, polished narrative. What is the biggest misconception people have about your journey, your character, or how your company was actually built?
Many folks look at the white suit, the cane, and the smile and think I was just a lucky cartoon character who stumbled into a fortune late in life. They think it was an easy, overnight success story. They don't see the decades of hard labor, the fired jobs, the failed businesses, or the fact that I spent my retirement years driving across the country, sleeping in my car, just to get the business off the ground. It wasn't a corporate marketing strategy. It was pure, unadulterated persistence born out of necessity.
Building an empire always requires a steep personal cost. Looking back at the entirety of your life, what was the hardest sacrifice you had to make for the sake of your vision? And was it ultimately worth it?
The hardest sacrifice was the toll it took on my home life and my personal time. During the peak years of building the brand, I was completely consumed by the road. I missed out on a quiet, normal life, and my first marriage suffered greatly under the weight of my constant career changes and financial instability. Looking back at my life up to my final days, I believe the sacrifice was worth it because it proved that an old fellow could still accomplish something monumental, and it allowed me to provide employment and joy to thousands of people.
If you could send a single sentence back through time to yourself on the very first day you started this venture, knowing every trial, triumph, and heartbreak that awaited you, what would you say?
I would tell myself, Harland, don't you dare get discouraged by the closed doors, because your best work is going to start when everyone else thinks it is time to quit.
Colonel, do you have any closing remarks about the interview or the stories you shared that you would like to share with the listeners before signing off?
I would just like to say that no matter how many times you face a setback or a rejection in your own life, you must keep moving forward with honesty and dedication. I am so thankful to have had this time to look back on the journey and share these memories with you, Calvin. Thank you kindly for having me on your program.
Thank you, Colonel, for sharing your incredible journey with us. Hearing how you turned a simple gas station table into a global standard of quality through sheer grit and dedication is truly inspiring. And that wraps up another conversation from Beyond the Grave. Thanks for joining us on the Headstones and Microphones podcast, Founder Stories. Remember, legends may die, but their stories never do. Please help spread the word by sharing and following the pod.